Catholic school board trustee gets sanctioned, ordered into LGBTQ re-education, and mandated to apologize against her conscience. When I heard the story, I knew I had to do something to help her. When you hear from her lawyer, I think you'll feel the exact same way I do. Keep watching. I'll show you how you can get involved.
It's hard for the normal person to withstand. I mean, she has a life, she has a family. School board trustees, it's not a full-time job. It's not like you're making $180,000 a year like the crazy president of CUPE. You know, it's a tough job because you don't get paid much and it takes a lot of time, and yet you have this other normal life that you have.
I will show you an interview in a couple of minutes here that I recorded well over a week ago with the lawyer for a woman named Monique LaGrange. Now, LaGrange is an elected school board trustee for the Red Deer Catholic School Board. Remember that, Red Deer Catholic School Board. LaGrange has been stripped of all of her duties since it was uncovered that she shared a meme to her personal Facebook account. It was a photo of children waving pride flags and another of children waving Nazi flags with the caption, "Brainwashing is brainwashing." Now, what followed was a private witch trial for LaGrange, wherein the Red Deer Catholic School Board gave LaGrange 90 days to make an apology, take sensitivity training on topics related to the Holocaust, LGBTQ plus issues, the use of social media, and on human rights. But issuing an apology and subjecting herself to retraining for something LaGrange thinks she doesn't owe an apology for would violate her conscience. Something a Catholic school board might think would be a good and desirable quality in a Catholic school board trustee. Now, as I said, nearly 2 weeks ago at this point, I interviewed LaGrange's lawyer about what happens to her next. I'll show you that interview right away, I promise. But I was shocked to find out that LaGrange wanted to take the school board's gulag-style re-education, self-denunciation, forced struggle session ruling to judicial review to make a real judge look at the decision of the school board. But LaGrange didn't know if she had the money to keep at the fight. Well, I knew I had to do something to help. And I knew you would want to help too once you heard her story. So I connected LaGrange and her lawyer with the Canadian Civil Liberties charity, the Democracy Fund. And good news, they've agreed to fund LaGrange's attempts to seek judicial review. But the Democracy Fund can't do any of this work without your help. There will be a link underneath this video, wherever you're watching it, where you can pitch in to help this Catholic school board trustee fight for free speech against the LGBTQ cancel culture mob currently colonizing the Red Deer Catholic School Board. And those of you who do donate will receive a charitable tax receipt. Now let's hear from Monique LaGrange's lawyer, James Kitchen. James, thanks for joining us. How did she end up in trouble? Because this looks like it was posted to a non-professional social media account.
Yes, it was posted on her personal Facebook, and it was something called a story, which I understand to mean it's up for about 24 hours and it just sort of naturally comes down without anybody taking it down. But of course, as it is these days, someone complained to the school board, so that's how they found out about it. And then, of course, you know, they freaked out and they contacted her and said, well, this is terrible. You must be sorry. If you say you're sorry, maybe we'll accept that and then we can move on. And she said, no, I'm not sorry. I meant what I said. In fact, I even prayed about it before I did it, and I felt like that this was truthful and that I should share it, and that this is something I believe in and my constituents believe in. And they said, oh, okay, so you're doubling down and you're terrible. And so then what happened, so it was posted on August 30th, and then by September 5th, they had passed a motion to have her removed, okay? And they wrote to the minister to have him do that, which he, of course, he can't do. If anyone's ever followed the law in Alberta, he can't do that. He can only remove the whole board. He can't remove a trustee. Only the board can remove a trustee. So they'd already sort of passed judgment. They'd passed punishment before actually really giving her any type of hearing. So, which in my opinion is a procedural problem. Like that's, you know, it's the basic proven you're guilty or you're innocent until proven guilty. That's how it's supposed to work, which means you need to have some sort of actual hearing before there's, you know, sentence. So their lawyer got involved, sort of backed them off a little bit, and they said, okay, let's have a hearing now. Very secret hearing, of course, but now let's have a hearing. So that's what happened on the 25th. Is we had a full day, a secret hearing with the school board. I say secret, I mean, it's in camera. That's a technical legal term, but what that means in reality is secret. Nobody's allowed in but me and her. And there was a complaining trustee and her lawyer. What I mean by complaining trustee is the trustee puts in a complaint and says, look, I think Trustee LaGrange violated the Code of Conduct and the Education Act and that she needs to be removed. That was basically the complaint. So we spent the whole day in there, her answering questions. I answered a whole bunch of questions from the school board. I gave them my legal submissions. I submitted a 30-page brief, and then I gave a bunch of oral comments about what the law is, the freedom of expression, freedom of religion, the fact that the code wasn't actually breached, the fact that this wasn't the comparison that some people had tried to make it out to be. Like, it really was just, look, you can brainwash kids into Nazism and they don't know what it is or what the flag means or anything because they're 7. You can do the same thing with 7-year-olds nowadays with the pride flag and all the crazy things that means. It's just simply talking about indoctrinating little children into ideologies they can't understand and that's done by adults with political agendas. It's not that hard to figure out, actually. And we had a whole bunch of emails from the public. At least one of them was actually Jewish and said, I'm Jewish and I can understand what this means. It's not that complicated. And it's true. Right. So we had that evidence that, this is what she meant. She doesn't hate gay people. She doesn't think they should go in the gas chambers or they're trying to put anybody else in the gas chambers. That's not what this is about, obviously. And the public is understanding that. Here's the emails to show that. So, let's be clear about what she actually meant. And it seemed like the board understood, actually, that what she really meant. But even then, they were like, well, yeah, but even that's like unacceptable speech and she has to be disciplined for doing so. So anyways, a bunch of deliberations. And then yesterday on the 26th of September, that's when we got the vote from the school board. So we had a motion that said, here's all of the discipline measures, and I'll get into that. And, we're going to find her guilty of these things and impose these measures. And that motion was passed unanimously by the board.
Not a single objector to the witch trial of this Catholic woman for espousing a Catholic worldview.
Change of circumstances, I don't fully know what happened, but there was a trustee that during deliberations, it certainly seemed like he was on her side. He somehow had the personal emergency. He couldn't show up for the vote yesterday. I don't know what's going on there. But I don't know. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered. It would in that case, it would have been 4-1. And instead it was just 4-0. There's 7 trustees on the school board. One of them is Trustee LaGrange. And then there's the complaining trustee. She can't vote, obviously, conflict of interest. And so there were supposed to be 5. This guy couldn't show up for the votes. There ended up being 4. So 4-0. So now the interesting thing is that the trustee who complained asked for Trustee LaGrange to be removed. They call it disqualification. So completely kicked off the board. That's what they asked for. And I said, well, obviously that's ridiculous. And they seemed to agree with me on that. So one trustee said she should have been kicked off. But the motion was not to kick her off. The motion was to, almost the same thing, right? The motion was she could stay on the board, so she could still come to board meetings and vote. But she can't be on any committees. She can't attend any events. Okay, so the middle school graduation, she can't be there. She can never speak for the board, right? Because some of the trustees take turns communicating things to the public for the board. She could never speak for the board. So basically, you're removing 3/4 of all her regular duties, right? Basically, all she can do is go to board meetings and vote. But here's the real kicker. You're probably going to like this. She has to do intensive sensitivity training. So she has to get sensitivity training on the LGBT community and how oppressed they are and how much they've been discriminated against and that sort of stuff. Sensitivity training on the Holocaust and what it means and all that sort of stuff. And there was some other stuff in there too, but those are the 2 big ones. And then she has to do it within 90 days. And if she doesn't, then it'll be another code of conduct violation. And of course, ultimately that would probably result in her being kicked out then. So basically, she's not allowed to do all these activities, and even just to continue to sit on the board and vote on board matters, she's going to have to undergo this re-education. And if she doesn't, she'll then be kicked out.
So what happens next for her? Is there any sort of appeals process, or are we just going to allow the board, because these are the rules, to completely disenfranchise everybody who voted for her?
Yes, it is that. You can have these judicially reviewed. So I can go off to the Court of King's Bench, it's now called, and I can file what's called an originating application for judicial review. And like any government decision or administrative state decision like this, we can have a judge look at it and review it and decide whether or not it was reasonable, whether or not it was lawful. We may do that, we may not. She hasn't decided yet, right? She sort of has to digest all this. Obviously she's going to have to pay for that, right? So she's going to have to decide, first of all, do I want to do this? Do I have a chance of winning? Can I actually afford this, or can I crowdfund enough for this? She has to make a lot of determinations, and we don't have to decide those right away, right? She has the 90 days before the sensitivity training deadline runs out, and we have 6 months to file with the court. So I told her, look, think about it for a couple of weeks, see if we can come up with an answer within the month, and then we can tell everybody who's interested whether or not we're actually taking it to the courts. So I can't say right now. Hopefully in a month I can say whether or not she wants to. I think it would be good. I think it would be important to do so. But it's up to her, right? I mean, it's pretty tough to go through this type of stuff. She's just trying to fight for parents, right? She's not like a career school board trustee. This is her first term. She's just trying to fight for parents, and the constant, and this is the thing, right? The constant attacks are meant to exclude people, normal people who think normal things, like her, like you, like me. All these things are designed to just keep them out, right? Keep them out of anything where they can have any influence. That's what this is, right? The mob cancel culture. And it's hard to withstand. I mean, I deal with it all the time, but that's me. It's hard for the normal person to withstand. I mean, she has a life, she has a family. School board trustees, it's not a full-time job. It's not like you're making $180,000 a year like the crazy president of CUPE. It's a tough job because you don't get paid much, and it takes a lot of time, and yet you have this other normal life that you have. So we'll see. I know she has a lot of supporters, and I would encourage them to reach out and encourage her to continue to be brave. She was very, very courageous through this whole thing, and it was an honor to represent her.
I want to ask you my final question. How is she holding up? Because we've seen other victims of this mob re-education and slander take their own lives. So it is my concern that, as you say, these sorts of mob attacks, which Christians should be very wary of, by the way, that it weighs so heavily on the normal person who just wants to get involved in their community and do the right thing.
Yeah, it does. No, she's doing all right. She's discouraged and disheartened, of course, but she's doing all right. It really helps, and I don't want to. I want to be careful with taking credit here, but I know it helped her to have me come in and take a lot of the flack and to say, look, you were reasonable, you've been righteous, you've done the right thing. She didn't apologize, right? And this was long before I came along and advised her not to apologize, which is what I do with my clients. And I say, look, I think this is great. You had no lawyer to help you, and you didn't cave, and you didn't apologize. You did what was right. You need to know that I'm saying you did what was right. And I think that meant a lot for her. So I think she's doing okay, because I was able to absorb a lot of that. I dealt with a lot of it. And I encouraged her and told her that she did the right thing. She did the right thing in law. She did the right thing, I think spiritually. And so I think she's at peace with like what she did and how it turned out. Like, I think the worst thing is when you kind of waver and violate your conscience, and then you feel even worse afterwards. She at least has the comfort of knowing, hey, I stood my ground and I did what was right, and the consequences were severe, but at least I kept my integrity, right? And so I think she's pleased about that.
For those of you who do donate at the special link beneath this video, you will receive a charitable tax receipt, since the Democracy Fund is a registered Canadian civil liberties charity. And thank you in advance to everybody who donates to keep free speech alive. And might I ask you to consider signing the petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com, wherein you can add your name to the list of people standing against sexual indoctrination in the classroom. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Adding your name to the list of Canadians against sexualized indoctrination in the classroom does two things. It tells the good guys, keep fighting, we are standing with you. Ignore the voices seeking to contaminate our children with gender ideology. And it shows the bad guys that they are the fringe radicals, not the parents. So add your name to the list of Canadians at stopclassroomgrooming.com.